Please leave first class immediately. At 11:14 p.m., 35-year-old Supervisor Amber Sterling spoke those sharp, proud words at Atlanta's Gate B19. In front of her stood a giant wearing size 23 shoes and weighing 147 kilograms. Amber wanted to give his seat to a VIP, claiming his huge size would unbalance the cabin. The quiet man, with his head bowed, was Shaquille O'Neal, a four-time NBA champion with a $400 million fortune. He only wanted a simple, quiet flight to Newark. When he saw Amber scold flight attendant Evelyn for speaking up, Shaq chose to stand up for the helpless. A silent war began between true compassion and the cruel rules of customer service. Could Shaq protect Evelyn's dignity against Amber's cold and heartless demands? The answer lies in the captain's decision as he walks out of the cockpit. Atlanta's airport never really slept, but it did slow down after 11 at night. The crowds thinned out. The announcements grew less frequent. Cleaning carts rolled quietly past empty gates, and the smell of rain drifted in through the doors near baggage claim. Shaq did not argue. He never did. He picked up his old black duffel bag and slid it over one shoulder. He folded himself smaller, the way he always did in tight spaces. He bent his neck under the low gate sign without thinking. Years of doorways had taught him that trick. 6 other passengers sat nearby. Nobody said a word. They just watched, the way people watch something they do not understand. The flight to Newark was supposed to be simple. He just wanted to see his mother, Lucille. She lived alone now in a small brick house on Chadwick Avenue. He flew home every few months. No entourage, no cameras, just a tired man with sore knees and a heavy heart. He had paid full price for seat 2A. Extra legroom mattered. His knees could not bend any other way after years on hardwood floors. Gate B19 smelled like burnt coffee and jet fuel. Rain tapped softly against the tall windows outside. Most travelers had already boarded other flights. Only a few late departures still buzzed under the fluorescent lights. Shaq had picked the last flight on purpose. Fewer crowds meant fewer stares. He liked airports best at night, when nobody had the energy left to ask for a photo. Tonight, he just wanted to close his eyes for 2 hours and land near his mother. Since retiring, his life had grown quieter than people imagined. He spent most weeks running small mentoring programs for kids in struggling neighborhoods, never with cameras around, never with much fanfare. He preferred it that way. Loud attention had never fixed anything that mattered to him. Amber Sterling did not know any of that. She only saw a big problem crowding her small cabin. "Sir, I need you to move to the back," she said again. Her voice stayed flat and final. "Where exactly?" Shaq asked. His voice was low and slow, the way it always was. "Economy. Row 34. There's a seat open back there." Shaq looked down at his ticket. Then he looked at her badge. Amber Sterling, gate supervisor. He did not raise his voice. He never did. He just asked one quiet question. "Can I ask why?" Amber's jaw tightened. "We have a VIP guest joining this flight. Your seat is needed for cabin balance." It was a strange phrase. Cabin balance. Like he was cargo, not a paying customer. Behind her, a young flight attendant named Evelyn Marsh stood near the boarding door. She had watched the whole exchange. Her hands shook slightly around her scanner. "Ma'am," Evelyn said carefully. "His ticket was bought 6 weeks ago. Full fare. He has priority seating rights." Amber spun around. "I did not ask for your opinion, Evelyn. I'm only saying the manifest shows. I said leave it alone." Evelyn's mouth closed. She looked down at her worn black shoes. Shaq watched all of it carefully. He had spent years learning how to read a room, without saying a single word. He saw fear behind Evelyn's eyes. He saw something else too. A deep tiredness, the kind that comes from double shifts and bills that never stop coming. He thought about his mother 30 years ago, scrubbing floors in Newark before dawn. She never raised her voice either. She just worked and never let anyone see her break. Lucille used to leave the house at 5 in the morning. She came home smelling like bleach and other people's kitchens. She never complained about any of it. Not once. Not even when her knees gave her trouble climbing the porch steps. She used to say complaining only used up energy a person needed for tomorrow. Shaq carried that lesson everywhere he went, long after the championships, long after the cameras stopped following him around. Stay quiet. Stay steady. Save your strength for the moment. That actually matters. Shaq slowly rose to his full height. Not fast. Not loud. Just present. At 6'11", his shadow stretched across the whole gate counter. I'll move, he said quietly. But I want her name written down as the one who flagged my ticket the right way. Amber blinked. She had not expected that. Why does that matter to you? She asked. Because she did her job right. I want that on record somewhere. Amber's cheeks went red. She turned to her keyboard and typed something fast. Noted, she said, though her tone said the opposite. Part of Shaq wanted to just keep walking. Arguing never solved much, not in his experience. Loud men rarely changed anyone's mind. But something about the word noted, said with so little meaning behind it, made his feet feel heavy where he stood. Shaq picked up his bag again. He took 2 slow steps toward the long walk to row 34. Then he stopped. Because Amber leaned closer to Evelyn and lowered her voice to a hiss. You embarrassed me in front of a passenger, Amber said. That's strike 2 this month. 1 more, and I write you up for good. Evelyn's lips trembled. I was just trying to help him board correctly. Help is not your job. Following my lead is your job. Shaq heard every word. He had ears made for arenas, trained to catch a single voice through 40,000 screaming fans. A whisper at a quiet gate was nothing to him. He turned back around. Ma'am, he said to Amber, I think I'll just wait right here a minute. Sir, the gate is closing soon. Then we've got a minute, Shaq said. Maybe 2. He set his bag down on a row of empty chairs and folded his big hands together. He did not glare. He did not threaten. He simply waited, the way he used to wait on the free throw line, with the whole arena holding its breath. A young gate agent named Marcus Webb sat at the next terminal, half watching the boarding screen. He was 24 years old, new to the job, still learning where the lines were drawn. He noticed Amber's radio call a moment earlier, before the argument started. Gate B19, requesting reassignment override for seat 2A, Amber had said, into her radio. Passenger is being difficult. Marcus frowned at his own screen. The word difficult did not match what he had just watched. The big man had not raised his voice once. He had not even complained. Marcus quietly pulled up the gate log on his terminal. He typed in Amber's employee code, just out of habit, just to check something small. What he found made his stomach tighten. This was not the first soft reassignment tonight. It was the 11th one this month, all logged under Amber's badge number. Every single one followed the same pattern. A full-fare passenger, seated in first class, moved without real cause. Every passenger flagged the same way in the system notes. Low complaint probability. Marcus scrolled back further, past midnight, past last week, all the way to the start of the quarter. The pattern held steady the whole time. Quiet passengers, larger passengers, older passengers traveling alone. None of them had filed a single complaint afterward. That was exactly the point, Marcus realized slowly. The system was built to pick people unlikely to push back. He did not understand the full phrase yet, but he wrote the date and time on a sticky note and folded it into his shirt pocket. Something about it felt wrong, like a crack under a floor that nobody else had noticed yet. He thought about texting his cousin, Priya, who worked in compliance at the airline's main office downtown. She had told him once that small red flags mattered more than people realized. Most big problems started out looking small and easy to ignore. He decided to wait, just a little longer, to see how the night unfolded before bothering her this late. A few minutes later, when the argument at the counter grew louder, Marcus changed his mind. He typed a short message to Priya, just a few lines describing the pattern he had found. He hit send before he could talk himself out of it. Priya wrote back almost immediately, even though it was nearly midnight. She told him to keep everything documented, screenshots included, and to flag it formally first thing in the morning, if nothing changed tonight. Marcus felt his shoulders relax slightly, glad someone above him took it seriously right away. Meanwhile, the gate area grew quiet and tense. A few passengers pulled out their phones, not to film, just to check the time, wondering if their flight would leave on schedule. Amber clicked her radio again. Security to gate B19, please. Possible boarding delay. Evelyn's eyes widened. Amber, he didn't do anything wrong. He's just standing there. He's holding up my gate, Amber snapped. That counts as something. 2 uniformed officers arrived within minutes. The taller one, Officer Dale Pruitt, had worked the airport for 9 years. He had seen every kind of gate dispute there was. "Evening, folks," Officer Pruitt said. "What's going on here?" "This passenger is refusing to comply with a seating reassignment," Amber said quickly. Shaq raised one hand, calm and slow. "I already agreed to move, officer. I just asked her to note something for the record first." Officer Pruitt looked between the two of them. He had a good instinct for who was telling the truth, built from years of practice. His partner, Officer Renee Castillo, stood a few steps back, scanning the gate area the way she always did, watching hands more than faces. She had learned that trick from her training officer years ago. "Can I see your ID and boarding pass, sir?" Officer Pruitt asked Shaq. Shaq handed both over without a word. Officer Pruitt glanced down at the name printed clearly on the identification card. His eyebrows lifted just slightly, then settled again. He said nothing about it. He was a professional, and professionals do their job quietly. He handed the ID back. "Everything checks out here. No violation that I can see." Amber's face flushed. He delayed boarding. "Looks like a conversation to me," Officer Pruitt said evenly. "Not a crime." Officer Castillo leaned closer to her partner. "Manifest says full fare, seat 2A, she added quietly. "No conduct issue listed anywhere." "We're clear here," Officer Pruitt said, turning to her with a small nod. The officers stepped back to the edge of the gate, watching but no longer involved. Amber's plan had not worked the way she wanted. An older passenger named Walter Briggs sat just a few seats away, sipping black coffee from a paper cup. He had flown this same route for work meetings for almost 20 years. He had seen plenty of gate disputes before, but something about this one bothered him more than usual. "Excuse me," Walter said, leaning forward slightly. "I don't mean to get involved, but that man didn't do a single thing wrong. I watched the whole thing." Amber turned toward him sharply. "Sir, this doesn't concern you." "Maybe not," Walter said, "but I'll be writing a review either way." "Might as well be an honest one." He said nothing else after that. He simply sat back, sipped his coffee, and watched quietly, the same way everyone else at the gate had started watching. She turned to Evelyn instead, her voice sharp and low. "This is your fault. You stirred this up." "I only told the truth," Evelyn whispered. "The truth doesn't pay the bonus," Amber said, before catching herself and going quiet. Marcus, sitting nearby, heard that last sentence clearly. The bonus. He wrote it down on his sticky note too. Evelyn's hands trembled as she scanned the next boarding pass. She thought about her daughter, Mia, age 7, waiting at home with a neighbor because Evelyn could not afford a real sitter tonight. She thought about her bank account, sitting at exactly $212.47. She thought about the hospital bill from her husband's accident 2 years ago, still showing a balance of $9,400. She worked 2 jobs now, a morning shift at a diner and this evening shift at the gate, just to keep the lights on. Her husband, Tom, had been a delivery driver. A drunk driver ran a red light on Memorial Drive one rainy Tuesday and changed everything in 1 second. Evelyn still kept his old work jacket folded in their closet. She had not found the strength to give it away yet, and she was not sure she ever would. Mia did not fully understand why her mother left for work twice a day now. She just knew her mom always came home smelling like coffee or jet fuel and always kissed her goodnight no matter how late it got. She could not afford to lose this job. Not now. Not with rent already 12 days late. But she also could not stay quiet while a man was being pushed around for no real reason. Something in her would not let her. Shaq watched her face carefully. He recognized the look right away. It was the same look his mother used to have. She would stand at the stove at midnight, too proud to ask anyone for help. She was too tired to pretend everything was fine, but she pretended anyway, just to keep moving forward. He walked closer to the counter, slow and careful, the way a big man learns to move in small rooms, so nothing breaks. "Ma'am," he said to Amber, "can I ask you something simple?" "What now?" Amber said, not looking up. "Who exactly is the VIP you're moving me for?" Amber hesitated. "That information is confidential." "Is it a medical emergency?" Shaq asked. "A family thing? Somebody in trouble?" "It's a business account holder," Amber said stiffly. A regional sales partner. Shaq nodded slowly. So nobody's in danger. Nobody's sick. Somebody just wants my seat, because they sell more tickets than me. Amber said nothing. I'm not trying to make trouble, Shaq said. I just want to understand the rule before I follow it. Evelyn spoke up again, quieter this time, but steady. There isn't really a rule, sir. Not one I've ever seen written down. Amber's eyes snapped toward her. Evelyn. I'm sorry, Evelyn said. But it's true. I checked the manual twice tonight. She had even pulled the printed binder from under the counter earlier. She flipped through pages of seating policy, page after page. Her fingers found nothing close to what Amber claimed. She kept that binder open on the counter now, just in case anyone needed proof. The gate fell silent again. A few passengers glanced up from their phones, sensing something shifting in the air, even if they could not name what it was. That was the moment the cockpit door opened down the jet bridge. Captain Russell Doyle stepped out, tall and calm, his gray hair neat under his pilot's cap. He had been finishing pre-flight checks when the delay report buzzed through his headset. 12 minutes behind schedule for a gate dispute was unusual. He liked to see things with his own eyes before they grew into bigger problems. He walked up holding a small tablet, scrolling through the digital manifest as he approached. Evening, everyone, Captain Doyle said. Mind telling me what's holding up my flight? Amber straightened her posture immediately. Captain, we have a seating issue. This passenger was reassigned, but there's been some resistance. Captain Doyle glanced at his tablet, scrolling to seat 2A. He read the full name on the manifest. He paused for half a second longer than he meant to. Shaquille Rashawn O'Neal. He had grown up in Baton Rouge, watching highlight reels with his father every Sunday night. He remembered his father shouting at the television whenever that name came up, half in awe, half in pure joy. His father had passed away 6 years ago. The name still carried weight for him, quiet weight, the kind you do not say out loud at work. Captain Doyle did not smile. He did not point. He simply looked up calmly. This passenger has a confirmed full fare seat in 2A, he said. Is there a documented reason for reassignment? There's a VIP request, Amber said. A VIP request isn't grounds to remove a paying, ticketed passenger, Captain Doyle said. Not under our contract of carriage. You know that. Amber's confidence cracked slightly. I was following standard procedure. Show me the procedure, Captain Doyle said. In writing. Amber opened her mouth, then closed it again. There was no document to show him. There never had been. What nobody at the gate knew was the message Amber had received from her own regional manager 3 days earlier. It said her upgrade numbers were below target again, the third month in a row. It said her position would be reviewed if the trend continued. Amber had read that message 6 times before bed that night, her stomach tight, with worry about her own mortgage payment. She had not built the quota system. She had only learned to survive inside it, the same way countless gate supervisors before her had learned to survive inside it. That did not make her words to Evelyn kind. It only explained where the coldness had first come from. Captain Doyle turned to Evelyn. Did you flag this reassignment as incorrect? Yes, sir, Evelyn said. Right when it happened. Good, he said simply. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. Amber's face went pale, then red, then pale again. Sir is welcome back in seat 2A, Captain Doyle said, looking at Shaq. I apologize for the confusion tonight. Shaq nodded once. Thank you, Captain. I appreciate that. He did not gloat. He did not raise his voice in victory. He simply picked his bag back up, the same slow, quiet way he had picked it up before. Amber, however, was not finished. Cornered and embarrassed, she turned her frustration back toward Evelyn one more time. You went around me, Amber said, her voice tight and shaking now. I will be writing this up tonight. Insubordination, plain and simple. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. I only told the truth. The truth got you written up, Amber said coldly. Welcome to the real world. Captain Doyle held up one hand. Actually, I'll be filing my own incident report tonight too. Amber froze. About what, sir? About a supervisor pressuring her staff to remove paying customers without cause, he said, and punishing an employee for following the actual rules. For the first time, that night, Amber had no quick answer ready. Marcus Webb, still sitting at his terminal, slid his sticky note across the counter toward Captain Doyle, without saying a word. The captain read it, eyebrows lifting again. 11 reassignments this month, Captain Doyle read aloud, quiet enough for only a few to hear. All under one badge number. Amber's hands began to tremble. I think, Captain Doyle said, it's time we called regional. Within 20 minutes, a video call connected on the gate's terminal screen. Diane Castellano, Regional Operations Director for Crest Point Airlines, appeared on the display, sharp-eyed and clearly pulled from dinner. Talk to me, Diane said. What's happening at B-19? Captain Doyle explained calmly, point by point. The reassignment. The missing documentation. The pattern Marcus had found. The pressure placed on Evelyn for speaking up. Diane's expression hardened as she listened. She pulled up the company database on her end, typing quickly. Pull up the tier shift logs, she said to someone off-screen. A moment later, numbers filled her own monitor. She read silently for almost a full minute. Nobody at the gate spoke. The numbers on her screen told a clear story. $40 per soft reassignment. Bonus payouts tied directly to those numbers every single month. A scoring system, built quietly into the booking software, ranked passengers by how likely they were to complain. Diane had approved a budget increase for that software 8 months earlier. She had never imagined exactly how it would get used at the gate level. There's a quota program, Diane finally said, mostly to herself. $40 per soft reassignment, tracked by employee code. It targets passengers flagged by an internal scoring system labeled low complaint probability. She looked back at the camera, directly at Amber now. Did you know this program specifically targeted passengers who were unlikely to push back? Diane asked. Amber's mouth opened. Nothing came out at first. I was told it improved upgrade revenue. Amber finally said, her voice small now. I didn't write the program. I just followed the numbers. You followed numbers that singled out quiet customers for unfair treatment, Diane said. That includes tonight's passenger. Diane paused, scrolling further through the records on her screen. And it isn't only Atlanta, she added quietly. I'm seeing the same pattern in Charlotte and Houston too. This goes well beyond one gate. The gate area had gone completely still. Even the passengers waiting nearby had stopped pretending not to listen. Amber did not shout. She did not argue anymore. She simply stood there, her shoulders sinking, her eyes fixed on the counter in front of her. The proud tone from earlier had drained out of her completely. Diane continued, her voice firm but controlled. Effective immediately, the tier shift program is suspended company-wide pending a full review. She paused, then added, Evelyn Marsh will not be disciplined tonight. In fact, I want her flagged for a commendation. She followed correct procedure under real pressure. Evelyn pressed a hand over her mouth, eyes wet with relief instead of fear now. As for you, Amber, Diane said, you're suspended pending investigation. Corporate compliance will be in touch tomorrow morning. Amber nodded once, silently, and stepped back from the counter. She did not slam anything. She did not storm off. She simply walked away quietly, smaller than she had looked all night. Shaq watched the whole exchange, without a single word of triumph. He felt no joy in watching someone fall. He only felt the same old ache he always felt. It went back 30 years, to watching grown men talk down to his mother. They talked to her like she did not belong in stores she had every right to be in. He stepped toward Evelyn instead, voice low and warm. You did good tonight, he said. Real good. Evelyn wiped her eyes quickly. I almost didn't say anything. I was scared. Scared and still did the right thing, Shaq said. That's the only kind of brave that counts. She let out a small, shaky laugh. I don't even know your name. Shaq smiled gently. Don't worry about that part. Just worry about getting home safe to your little girl tonight. Evelyn blinked, surprised he knew. How did you? You mentioned her bills earlier, Shaq said simply. Mia, right? 7 years old. Evelyn nodded, stunned that anyone had been listening that closely. She's lucky to have a mom who tells the truth even when it costs her something, Shaq said. That sticks with a kid longer than money does. Captain Doyle approached a moment later, holding his tablet. We're ready to board whenever you are, sir. Appreciate you stepping in tonight, Shaq said quietly. Didn't have to do that. Felt like the only right move, Captain Doyle said. He hesitated, then added, "My dad used to watch you play, years back. Never thought I'd be the one fixing your seat assignment someday." Shaq smiled just slightly. "Tell him I said thanks, whenever you talk to him." "He passed a while back," Captain Doyle said. "But I think he'd have liked tonight just fine." Shaq nodded once, a quiet kind of respect passing between two tired men at the end of a long shift. Shaq nodded and picked up his bag one final time. He walked the short distance to the jet bridge, ducking his head under the low frame, without thinking about it, the way he always did. Before stepping inside, he turned back toward Evelyn one more time. "Take care of yourself," he said, "and keep flagging things the right way. The world needs more people like that." Evelyn smiled through tired eyes. "I will." The plane pushed back from the gate 18 minutes later than scheduled. Nobody on board complained about the delay once they learned, quietly and later, exactly why it had happened. 3 weeks passed before the company finished its full review. Crest Point Airlines issued a formal statement to its employees, announcing the permanent end of the tier shift quota system. The statement admitted the program had created unfair pressure on staff and unfair treatment towards certain passengers. It promised a new training initiative focused on fair boarding practices company-wide. Diane Castellano personally led the first round of meetings, with gate supervisors across 4 major hubs. She told each room the same thing, plainly and without softening it. No employee should ever feel forced to choose between a bonus and basic fairness. Any system built that way needed to be torn down, not patched. The internal audit eventually found similar patterns at 6 other airports across the company's network. Dozens of passengers had been quietly bumped over the past year, almost all of them flagged by that same hidden scoring system. None of them ever knew exactly why it had happened, until the new policy review explained it plainly in a company-wide memo. That night, Evelyn came home a little after 2 in the morning. Her neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, had fallen asleep on the couch, with Mia curled against her side. Evelyn gently scooped her daughter up, careful not to wake her fully. "Mommy," Mia mumbled. "Eyes still closed." "I'm here, baby," Evelyn whispered. "Go back to sleep." Mia smiled faintly and settled against her mother's shoulder, already drifting off again. Evelyn carried her to bed, kissed her forehead, and stood there a moment longer than usual, just watching her breathe. Evelyn Marsh was promoted 2 months later to senior boarding trainer for the Atlanta hub. Her new role focused entirely on teaching new flight attendants how to recognize unfair reassignment requests and how to document them properly. Her pay increased enough to finally clear the hospital balance from her husband's accident. She still worked hard, still raised Mia mostly on her own, but she no longer worried about choosing between rent and groceries every single week. On her first day training new hires, Evelyn told them one simple rule before anything else. "Write down what actually happened," she said, "even when someone tells you not to. The truth protects you better than silence ever will." Marcus Webb received a quiet thank you note from corporate compliance for flagging the pattern early. There was no ceremony, no public announcement, just a short email and a small bump in his next paycheck. He kept a fresh sticky notepad in his desk drawer after that, just in case he ever needed it again. He stayed at the gate counter, still new, still learning. He felt a little more confident now, knowing that doing the right thing actually mattered inside this company. Some nights he thought about quitting. The pay was never great, but nights like that one kept pulling him back. Amber Sterling was reassigned to a different department after the investigation closed, away from gate operations entirely. Nobody at B19 spoke about her much after that. She simply disappeared from the schedule one day, quietly, without any final scene or shouting match. The system that pressured her into bad choices had been dismantled, but the choices had still been hers to make. As for Shaq, nobody at Crest Point Airlines ever announced who exactly had been sitting in seat 2A that night. There were no press releases, no interviews, no photos. Only an internal compliance file, marked confidential, listing one full legal name beside a list of policy violations corrected because of it. Walter Briggs kept his promise too. He wrote a short, honest review online a few days later. He never mentioned Shaq by name. He only described a tall, quiet passenger treated unfairly. He also described a young flight attendant brave enough to say so. He never knew how much that review mattered to the people reading it inside Crest Point's compliance office. The cabin lights were dim by the time Shaq finally settled into seat 2A again. Rain streaked softly against the small, oval window. He stretched his legs out, as far as they would go. He closed his eyes, grateful for once. He let himself disappear into the quiet hum of the engines. He landed in Newark a little after 1 in the morning. He took a cab the short distance to Chadwick Avenue, the same quiet street he had grown up dreaming on. His mother, Lucille, was still awake, sitting at her small kitchen table, with a cup of tea going cold in front of her. "You're late," she said, not looking up from her crossword puzzle. "Flight got held up," Shaq said. He folded himself into the small chair across from her, the same way he had folded himself into airport seats his whole life. "Anything interesting happen?" Lucille asked, finally glancing at him over her reading glasses. Shaq thought about Evelyn's trembling hands. He thought about the sticky note in Marcus's pocket. He thought about Amber's silence at the end, the kind that says more than any shouting ever could. "Nothing much," he said quietly. "Just somebody doing their job right, even when it was hard." Lucille smiled, the same tired, proud smile she always gave him. "Sounds like a good night then." "Yeah," Shaq said, looking down at his enormous, calloused hands resting on her small kitchen table. "It was a good night." Lucille reached over and patted his arm once. She had done that since he was a small boy. Even then, he somehow grew too big for every doorway in the house. She did not need the whole story. She never had. She just needed to know her son still carried the same heart she had raised him with. "Drink your tea before it gets cold," she said, sliding her own cup toward him. Shaq laughed softly and took a sip, even though it was already lukewarm. Some things were worth doing anyway, just because his mother asked. Outside, Newark stayed quiet under the dark sky. It held its small, ordinary miracles close. They never made the news, but they mattered just the same. Somewhere back in Atlanta, the gate lights at B-19 dimmed for the night. The cleaning carts rolled past one more time, quiet and steady. Tomorrow, a new shift of passengers would line up at that same counter, never knowing what had happened there hours earlier. But Evelyn would remember. Marcus would remember. Even Amber, wherever she ended up next, would carry the memory of that night for a long time. Lucille never learned the full story either, not the part about Amber or Diane or the quiet investigation that followed. She only knew her son had come home safe, smelling faintly of jet fuel. He wore that same calm look he always carried, after doing something quietly right. That was enough for her. It always had been. And somewhere over the dark Georgia sky, a tired, gentle giant flew quietly toward home. He asked for nothing more than a little room to fold himself into. He asked for a little dignity to carry with him wherever he landed next.